All rise for a moment of silence and a salute to the flag, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Notice of this meeting was provided to the Westfield Leader, Star Ledger, and promptly posted on the municipal bulletin board. Following the office of municipal clerk, informing the public of the time and place according to the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Law, Chapter 231, PL 1975. And welcome everyone to the budget meeting this evening. Hello, Mayor. Please turn off your cell phones and put them on vibrate, please. Sarah, have a roll call, please.
Mayor Lombardo,
Here.
Councilman Lombardo,
Here.
Councilman Lazaro,
Excused, he has a previous commitment.
Councilman McCormick,
Here.
Councilman Sarno,
He'll be really late.
Councilman Disco. Here. Council President Lewis. Here.
At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to the Finance Committee, who will present the 2018 municipal budget.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for being here tonight. I just want to introduce everyone. Everyone already knows our Administrator, Ms. Ariema, also our CFO, Tax Collector, Assistant Administrator, Sandy Bruns, and also our Auditor, one of the two, that have been working with us this budget season, Warren Craig. So thank you for being here. Here we go. Now that the welcomes are aside, I just want to first start by thanking my fellow members of the Finance Committee, Council President Blumenstock and Councilwoman Kugaro. And I also want to thank our professional staff of the Borough Administrator, CFO, and Auditor for the time they've put into this budget process at our various meetings. And I can assure you there has been no such thing as a short Finance Committee meeting this budget season at all. I have now had the honor of serving as Finance Chair 5 times under 2 different mayors. Each year the committee and the council, of course, face challenges, and this year is no different. As I mentioned in my cover memo on the budget sheets that went out on Friday to the mayor and council, the RVSA and the police pension system, on the budget sheets it's labeled police fire retirement system, went up at $63,600 and $61,482 respectively. So that's over $120,000 on those 2 line items alone, and those are not discretionary spending. On the other hand, there was a decrease in the non-union pension system, labeled in the budget as Public Employee Retirement System, of $28,112. As a committee, we spent hour after hour examining each line of the budget carefully, discussing our ideas and making decisions. We compromised during the process too, so we could come here tonight in unanimous support of the budget before you. Again, we're in unanimous support as a committee behind the budget that's before you tonight. Our goal, as always, is to provide the residents of Garwood with the best possible services at the best possible price. That goal was even exceeded this year by allocating $17,000 for a parking enforcement officer, as well as $5,000 for a property maintenance officer, as the council is continuing to work on updating the property maintenance ordinance. These enforcement positions were created and funded as a direct response to concerns we heard from residents about the level of enforcement on parking restrictions and property maintenance. The path we've taken is more cost-effective than having these duties filled by full-time police officers. Therefore, this budget actually represents an increase in services to the people. On another note about additions to the budget, the committee decided to allocate $500 for the Historical Committee. The Historical Committee requested $1,000 as it has to us in past years, which met some resistance in the past from council members because this would essentially create a new line item in the budget. However, the Historical Committee has proven to be a very active group, and we all know it serves a very important purpose here in our community. So this line item both recognizes it as its status as a borough entity, much like the Celebrations Committee, and it also provides it a little funding. A little can go a long way, especially when it comes to this committee. Also, it's important to note that the Historical Committee had a line item several years ago, but it was removed when the group became less active. A couple other hot topics this year included how the operating expenses of the recreation complex are funded, as well as raises for non-union, non-protected municipal employees. Since the recreation complex opened in December of 2014, $86,200 has been brought in through rentals to date. Just recently, $13,000 was generated for this spring season. This budget does not allocate any money to cover operating expenses of the complex, and everyone on the committee saw firsthand that this project is self-sustaining its operating expenses. Also, we spent more than an hour specifically discussing how to handle the tough question of raises for non-union staff. We compromised as a committee because it's important to us, and we wanted to show the rest of the council and the public that compromises can be made. Therefore, in the budget before you tonight, 2% would be given to non-union employees, and a fixed dollar amount was set for part-time non-union employees such as the planning board secretary and OEM director in this budget. On the matter of the DPW foreman rate, which had not been touched in about 30 years, the compromise included a $2 increase over the current $3 over-the-top hourly labor rate instead of the $3 more, the $3 additional that was originally discussed at past council meetings in an effort to get closer to equitable. This year's Finance Committee cut over $48,000, then an additional $108,000 out of the administrative budget presented to us on the onset. For example, reductions were made in legal, police, as well as streets and road salaries and wages, as well as other expenses, shade tree, retirement and sick payroll, and much more. We also took advantage of one-time revenues to the budget, including FEMA money and $75,000 collected in fees from the Russo One project. With all of that said, I want to express, like I have done in past years, that there is no magic wand to make sure taxes don't increase, otherwise taxes would have been staying flat all these years. Yet on some level, the stars must align to make it a reality. So a combination of diligent work on the part of the Finance Committee, borough professionals, one-time revenues that I just mentioned, and additional fund balance has made the stars align here in Garwood. So I have great news for everyone tonight. That means as the budget sits before you, there will be no municipal tax increase to Garwood taxpayers this year. This is the first time a zero budget has been reached in the last 17 years. I have anticipated this moment since I joined the council in 2011, always believed it was possible, and here we are. So if anyone has any questions or suggestions on the operating side of the budget, we will discuss them shortly. We should also tonight discuss the capital requests and needs of our various departments. After a great deal of discussion, the committee unanimously recognized necessary capital investments that would be needed to be bonded for in order to get the work done or the equipment purchased, simply because the borough has minimal capital reserve, and to include it in the operating budget would substantially impact the tax levy. Copies of many of the requests are in front of the council tonight, but there were also some verbal requests made that I'll go over later. We look forward to reviewing them as a whole council tonight to make sure we can proceed with the plan. And that concluding my introduction here, I want to turn it over to Supply Clooney's Warren Crecchi to discuss the cap bank ordinance like we usually do. If you could explain what it is and how it works, and essentially what we can expect on upcoming agendas in terms of a vote on that ordinance.
Well, the cap bank, obviously there's two caps. There's a tax levy cap and there's the appropriation cap. With the appropriation cap, it's this year, fortunately, it's 2.5%. Prior years, it was 0.5%. Then it was actually 0 2 years ago because inflation was so low. But this year, it's 2.5%. So in this budget, since we're at the 2.5%, and the budget has been reduced a little bit, you're under the spending cap by $441,000. So that's using some of the bank. But I mean, what will happen if you want to go to the 3.5? You'll pick up an extra $62,000 to bank in future years for the next 2 years. If you decide to go to the 3.5, but since the 2.5 is up there, not high, but it's been higher than it's been in the last several years, I need a little more relief for spending cap side of the budget anyway. So since you're at 441 under and your bank was 398, you're actually probably within the 2.5% of the budget. So, but if you want to get the 62,000 extra to bank for the next couple of years, then I suggest you do the cap bank ordinance at least for another year.
Okay. Could you explain the benefit of going forward with the cap bank ordinance
Well,
for
since
future
it seems like,
budget planning?
it just seems like that the, in other words, if you don't use it, in other words, you'll lose the 62,000 forever. So next year, you won't be able to add anything into the cap. Because it's only for 2 years, the 398 that you do have, you're going to lose one of those pieces for this year. So you'll have nothing in the future years if something goes on. You mentioned a couple of appropriations. Railway Valley, the pensions are all under the appropriation cap. So if they keep going up, you're going to have nowhere to go. I mean, those are very, large items in this budget. So I suggest that you do it. I mean, you've done it the last several years. I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to spend money like you didn't do it this year. You had the bank, you're not using it, but still, it's there
Right.
for a safety net.
Right.
Lucky it was 2.5. It was, matter of fact, it's 2.5. If it was 1%, you'd have to go into the bank. But since it's 2.5 this year, you really don't have to tap some of your bank this year. But you'll lose part of it next year because it's only good for 2 years.
Okay. And just to clarify for the public, one is, this is a mechanism that the state of New Jersey has put in because of the caps on the appropriation side of the budget.
Yes, since 1977, there's a cap on the appropriation side, the spending side of the budget as opposed to the tax side.
So essentially, even if taxes go down, you might still need to
Oh, yeah.
touch the cap bank,
Yeah, absolutely.
depending. So it's the state mechanism, and
Because you're funding the budget with revenue, it has nothing to do with the spending side. Like I said, the appropriations you had are still going up, so that affects the spending cap. It has nothing to do with the tax side.
right. And when he says banking the money, just for the public and the rest of the council's benefit, that does not actually mean moving any physical money. It's just an allowance.
It's just a planning number when it was used. I mean, like this way, I mean, you did it in the last couple of years. You had 398, that was bank, but you're really not using it. It doesn't mean you're raising taxes. As a matter of fact, taxes are flat. So,
Right.
but you're still, you still have the bank, you're not using it. It's just, if there is a spending increases next year, and they're over, I don't know what the cap is going to be, but you say it's 2.5%, and you need something, it gives you flexibility to at least adopt your budget.
Right. At what meeting could we expect the vote on introduction of the cap bank ordinance? Same night as
It has to be,
introduction?
well, it has to be done before the introduction of the budget.
Okay. So our next council meeting?
Or,
Well, not-
you can introduce it about the budget, as long as you do it first.
Right. Mhm. I've seen it done a couple of places.
27, right before intro, you could do it then.
Okay, so March 27th. Does anybody on the council have a question for Mr. Korecki about the cap bank ordinance? Okay. Okay, so moving on to focus on the operating side of the budget. Let's see here. I have a few different piles going, so just bear with me a second. I'll just open it up and see, I mean, at the present time, we have 3 members of the committee on the dais, but we have Councilman McCormick here, and I'm sure he has some questions or comments, and be happy to hear them and do our best to answer.
Okay.
Do you have any at this
No,
time? or-
go forward, thank you.
Okay. Let's go forward with the capital items then, and we can always come back to the operating side. No problem. So before the council and the mayor tonight, and Mayor, I'm sorry, did you have any questions on the operating side? Okay. So to go through the capital items, in front of you, there are a couple packets. One is from the police chief, and the other is from our superintendent of public works with their respective 5-year capital plans. So if we take a look at 2018 and what we're looking at, when it comes to the DPW, something that came up in the past, and I know it came out unanimous from the Streets and Roads Committee, was for a mason dump for $70,000. So just putting that out there that the Finance Committee fully supports moving forward on that and concurring with the Streets and Roads Committee. Also, the police department, there were a number of requests made, and this is something that the Finance Committee certainly would like to hear some feedback on, because while all 3, but then even 4 of the requests are certainly valid, certainly needed within the next year or two. It might be an area where we can prioritize our spending. So to give them to you, one is to replace a supervisor's vehicle, which would be replacing the 2012 Tahoe, and that's for about $35,000. There's also an emergency management van you might have seen around town, and to replace that would be approximately $36,000. Another item the chief brought to our attention was the in-car computers, those tablets. To replace them would be, in 6 of the vehicles, would be $33,000 approximately. And the other item was the ALCO test, and that's something where the state actually has to let us know the model and the type that can be purchased, and they have not yet put out that guideline. So I spoke with the police chief, and we thought at this time we can sort of put that on the back burner, the ALCO test, which is valued at about $18,000 to $22,000 we're looking at. So if we were to do all 3 of the others, you're looking at $100,000 in capital for the police department. This is a department that typically each year has been awarded a piece of equipment or multiple pieces from the council. So I'll open, maybe should I keep going through and then we can go back to that? Okay, so I'll keep running through it so you can get the total picture of what's been requested. So out of our administrative offices, records management, it's been talked about probably every year that I've been on the council, so the last 7 years, about how essentially we have boxes upon boxes of records that need to be scanned properly and done by a professional company because the state mandates how they're done. Ms. Ariema can speak to that in greater detail, but essentially this is a program where we put a little bit of money aside in the operating budget the past year, but it's getting to be the time when we really want to take a serious look at what we're doing, because right now Ms. Ariema is the gatekeeper in a sense to these documents, and she knows where everything is, but it is very time consuming if there's a request from the public, going down to the storage facility, looking through these boxes, and
I can't even do that, so I pick the boxes up, they're too heavy. And they're literally tied to a wall, so even if I thought I wanted to get to one behind there, I have to move all those boxes, and I can't. And every time I get an open request, I can't disrupt other employees and drag them down there to move boxes for me. It would be too frequent. So I've been lucky. I do have a lot of scanned records. I do my best, but there's just no other way to get access to those records other than to do it this way. And they're not like records that are, that are not important. They're very important records to people. And they contain information that is extremely helpful to homeowners. So at the same token, I was wondering if you were going to bring up the infrastructure.
I'm about to, but thank you for elaborating on the condition of that, because it's one of those capital items like some of the other ones. As you go around and you talk to people, they're not saying, hey, make sure you fix the records management system down at Borough Hall. But then when they need that document that's important for the sale of their house or something of that nature, it becomes a very, very important service that we provide as a borough. So it is important and we should take it seriously. So the county has just released the information for their infrastructure grant applications, which they have done the last few years, and Garwood has participated in it with road projects. Last year specifically, the requirement was that they had to be road projects. This year, they opened it up a bit more. The letter was included in our email from Ms. Ariema within the last week, so hopefully everyone reviewed that. And essentially, we have this opportunity now to take advantage of a grant from the county. It is a matching grant, correct?
Yes.
Yes, it is a matching grant. So in total, we might be looking at approximately, say, $80,000 to $100,000 to really get our records management system to where it should be. So what we can do is bond $40,000 and then have the county match $40,000 this year, so we could fund records management $80,000. So that's another item.
So, I don't mean to interrupt you, Councilman,
Oh.
but I just wanted to mention that we got this on March 1st. I forwarded it to the governing body with a submission deadline of April 1st, with another requirement that all the money has to be spent in 2018. So I will have a resolution prepared on the 13th to authorize me to submit this grant. I was just hoping that we will, you know, I won't put it on the agenda because in all fairness to people who aren't here, but I would have to know by the 13th because I need those 2 weeks to prepare the grant. Because it's due April 1st. I can't wait till March 27th. So I can't give myself a couple days for anything, so.
Right.
For the council.
Very fair. And I can say that the Finance Committee fully supported that. So we do have 4 council people here, we have the mayor. So hopefully, we can give you the green light tonight, once I get through all the
I would like to,
items.
yeah, I mean,
Sure.
I know last year I wasn't really supporting this. The more I got to know what's going on here, and also surrounding towns. I mean, in my business anyway, everything is online in Cranford. Somebody wants to look up back permits, I mean, 20, 30 years old, there's no access to it. Some of them are sitting in boxes, I mean, I've looked at them all. Somewhere along the line, you have to, like, really, everything's gotta be online, so people can access it. Otherwise, it's using up your time, their time, and
Well,
it's
we have a
really important
plan.
at this point.
You know, we have a system that, once we get these things all caught up, the staff is being trained to scan everything, stamp it with a little, we've got a little thing to scan, and then we put the paper away, knowing that we've got a line in the sand, we're going forward, we're creating all these electronic documents, and taking what the past was. And we're mostly talking about planning, zoning, construction records, because those are the records that we really need access to. There's a lot of other permanent records here, and part of the project would be, I don't know if anybody's seen the chief's new filing system that we approved last year. Those are what I would put in my safe for the there's a lot of records that, they're permanent records, and even if you pay to digitize them, I can't destroy them. I'm not asking to do that, because to me it's a waste of money. The records that we're gonna scan can be thrown out, and that's the beauty of it. All that paper is gonna be removed from this building, and it is voluminous. If you've been in that folder, which I know you all have, those are all planning and zoning records. They're all part of the scan project, as well as not all the records in the storage unit, but enough of them that once I clean them out, I may be able to go to a smaller storage unit. I still will need a storage unit because there's a lot of permanent records down there that I don't have room for. But I may be able to whittle everything down and move those permanent records to the safe. That's my goal.
How long do you think it'll take you to scan all that? Because you can only use the money in the current year.
Well, a company's gonna do that, so they're gonna get that done right away. And then I'm gonna buy the file cabinets. I'm gonna spend the money, but I'm gonna be physically involved in this for about 2 to 3 years.
So then basically, are you saying that with this, we have to use it all in 1 year though, then what happens next year?
Well, I'm gonna take what you guys have given me, and I'm gonna get done as much as I can, which I'm really gonna make like a huge, huge dent in it. And like I said, from now on, we already started creating
Right.
electronic records. So,
Because you just don't want to be allocating 40,000, and that's, we're lucky enough to be getting a grant for this, which is well used. But for 40,000 every year for 3 years, that's a lot then.
yeah, no, right now, you're bonding the 40, and I'm getting the 40 for
Right.
this. And let's see where we end up after that. If there's a little bit more that needs to be done after that, I'll let you know, but I don't recommend scanning records that you can't throw out. I mean, why do that? Why spend thousands of dollars when no matter, you can't destroy the paper? So getting involved in this scan project is when I'm talking to these scan people, and they're like, you know, there are some things that you can't destroy anyway. So I'm like, well, forget that, you know, we'll worry about that another day. So the beauty of that is that they're available. Like if I want to look at minutes from 1920, I can, but that's not a frequent need.
Right.
You know, these construction records are definitely a frequent need.
Yes, I know they are.
With that, do we have a consensus on the council that we're going to go forward with this?
To apply for the grant, absolutely.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll prepare a resolution for the next meeting.
Okay. Let's see here. I think for Councilman Sarno's benefit, what we just were talking about was applying to Union County for the infrastructure grant.
I feel it.
Okay. You read between the lines with that one? Good. Just to catch you up, though, we're talking about capital items right now.
Yep.
So DPW Mason dump, 70,000. Police department, supervisor's vehicle, about 35,000. OEM van, about 36,000. In-car computers, about 33,000. And an Alco test, 18 to 22,000. But the Alco test, we don't have the standards from the state yet as to what's purchased. So really, that would be pushed to the back burner. It's the other three items that'll need to be discussed more later. Moving on to the buildings and grounds arena, a couple items that have definitely been brought to the attention of the council before, so it's not the first time anyone's hearing it, but the roof above the firehouse needing to be replaced. And so right now, the ballpark is $150,000 to do that. So I know it's a lot of money there, but it's certainly something that is definitely needed, and I know Council President Blumenstock's talked about it a number of
Right.
times.
If I could just interject,
Sure.
just so the public's aware, because it is a big number, but it is a complete replacement of the roof. They have to take it all the way down. We patched it as many times, or layered as many layers as we can on it. So it needs to be completely removed and done over, and it is 6,100 square feet. So it is a large roof, which is why it is so expensive. Oh, thank you, that's right. We do have the $25,000 senior focus grant from the county. That was a non-matching grant, so that will be going into this, into that amount.
And also, we do have to remember, that if you call it the firehouse, we do have seniors that meet there. And also, too, I understand now that the historical committee's meeting there also now. So it's becoming a more vibrant building as we go forward, so. And probably do our best interest to follow through on that.
Well, it's gotta be fixed, I mean, otherwise
No, I'm
everything
just saying,
inside
it
the
just-
building will start
It's
to.
just not a firehouse.
Yep.
Was this project awarded yet, by the way?
No.
No, we will be going out for bid. That estimate is from our engineer, Mike Disco, who obviously has done this before and has background in it. So he gave us that estimate. Once we decide whether to bond for it, we will be going out to bid. I believe he'll be doing the specs for this? Yeah.
My question is for a roof, is this a 20-year type of thing, or is this a 10-year in terms of paying this back? Fair question in terms of paying back a
I don't
roof.
know, what's the useful life? I mean, you pay it back.
I think it's 20.
Well, then you
Well, it
pay
could be
it.
30, depends on what kind of warranty they get.
It just depends on the useful life.
I think it's 20 in our business.
In my business, it's 30.
No, that's by the bond law. The bond law may say 15, so that's.
Got it.
it's
Okay.
okay.
I
Goes by
just
the
want to know
bond.
if you do it okay.
Yeah, no, I don't know off the top of my head.
Thanks, Mark.
Another buildings and grounds item is the HVAC system here at Borough Hall. The estimate on that is $35,000, and really anyone that's come in this building more than once can tell that it tends to be very hot or very cold in this room and other parts of the building, and obviously there's energy being lost there, and we're essentially, by not being efficient, we're also not being cost effective. So to overhaul the HVAC system, we're looking at about $35,000. The fire department, both of those, by the way, the finance committee was in support of doing. The fire department made a request for laundry machines, and that was a total for the washer and the dryer, $24,000. And at this time, the committee was not inclined to say yes, but maybe down the road. Right now, they're using the Union County facility over in Westfield. Also, a request that's come up time and time again, ladder truck. Now we're looking at a price tag for a new one of $1.1 million, and I'm sure this is something that the fire committee will be discussing more this year too. Also, they had brought up to us firehouse door locks, but that's something, a smaller type of capital expense that could come out of the buildings and grounds budget. So that's not that pressing right now in terms of a capital decision. But the others are, so if there are any questions about them or any sentiments, especially from the police department with the various requests, it would be great to hear them now, so.
Can I ask, in terms of the police capital items, any idea from Chief Wright as to sort of the priority of his items?
Great question. I did speak with Chief Wright, and he said his top priority would be replacing the supervisor's vehicle, because the existing one has about 80,000 miles on it, and it's just about reliability. And so that was his top priority. And he said the in-car computers in particular, he could see later on in the year if there's some wiggle room in his operating budget and he has the ability to buy one or two at a time, he's open to doing that. So, all right. Okay. So at this time, does it seem as though we're all still favorable to the Mason dump for the DPW? Can we safely say that?
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor, but my question is, what you keep talking about is $70,000, but the paper we have in front of us is $75,000, so where's the $5,000 difference?
Good catch, and thank you for that. It was originally estimated to be $75,000, but then we got a more recent update that was $70,000. It would be purchased through a co-op.
Thank you.
Great question, good catch. Okay, and then records management, we're going forward with the grant, so that sounds very positive, that this is something, it's been a long time coming, and it's good that we're going to really take such a huge chunk out of it. And as Ms. Ariema said, the line in the sand has been drawn so that moving forward, the borough won't get into that type of predicament, which, I mean, based on the increased use of computers and scanning, it's just with the times, that would happen to any municipality. It's just a matter of when you're going to start the program. Okay. Firehouse roof, we're all in agreement, must be done. Yes. The HVAC system in this building here, okay? And ladder truck, can we take that to the fire committee?
There's a meeting
Fire
tomorrow,
commissioner?
but the government did say there's a state of emergency, so we'll see if there's.
Right, right. And we might even be out of here before the state of emergency, we'll have to see. Okay, so it sounds like we're on.
I just have one question.
Sure.
Madam Chairman. I don't know which of you boarded the discussion about the holiday lights. That came up at the Finance Committee. I know we talked about it, that we're having the holiday lights are now basically unavailable to us because they're old. Did that come up at the Finance
It
Committee?
didn't come up at the finance meeting, but is that something that the Streets and Roads Committee was
Well, the
looking
big
at
buildings
too?
and grounds, yeah, I'm just saying in general.
Mhm.
Because I have all the paperwork that I saved from the convention, just on the side of
I
that,
mean,
that's all.
I'm glad you brought that up. Certainly, it seems like we'll have some months to decide. Don't want to wait too long, obviously don't want to wait till November, but seeing as it's March and the buildings and grounds budget, that's one of those line items that's the toughest to budget for, because there could be one issue and it costs you $10,000, and boom, that's, you know, almost more than 10% of that line item.
I just wanted to let you know that I did speak with the superintendent to put that on his radar about the training with the New Jersey Transit, scheduling some of the men to possibly do that if we decide. So it's on his radar, but we do have to figure out whether we want to go through with that and put those, either those decorations back up or get new decorations.
And was there anything wrong with the old decorations? I don't even remember.
They were very hard to mount because they were around 30 years old.
30 years old, they've gotten real.
Oh, I'm being
The season
being
greetings and
kind.
happy holidays,
Yeah.
that thing is definitely well over 30 years.
Well, I know he also was looking into the possible decorations, and as I indicated that I had some documentation from the leagues and the municipalities from last year. We can review.
What kind of ballpark estimate are you looking for these? Is this an operating expense? What do you think?
For the decorations?
Yeah.
I would honestly have no idea how much
To be honest, I don't
something like that
know.
would cost.
All right, I mean.
Yeah, they were bought
it
so
feels-
long ago.
It feels like, without knowing, it just feels like an operating item, like a line item, that would come out of the operating budget, not capital expense. That's just my intuition.
Yeah, we didn't speak about that at all, but I'm
Right.
glad you checked with him about the getting them certified so that they can at least put them
Yeah.
up without any charge to the
Yeah.
town.
As long as we, at some point make a decision so that, he can go ahead and schedule it. Obviously doesn't want to schedule it until
We
we're
bought
sure
the
about it.
snowflakes out of the operating budget. Those were the last ones we bought. I think sometimes they still put up the Christmas tree. Those predate the snowflakes big time. The snowflakes were bought when I worked here, and they were not. They were.
And also, he had indicated they might not want to put on the trestle. It's a possibility. They're doing something
Well,
Yeah.
And we might even
Something
want to
else.
think outside the box with different
That's
types of decorations that could be done.
Yeah.
We can do
I
something.
agree.
And think about donations too. A lot of organizations love to donate for decorations of some sort. So if you get a quote, I can maybe toss some money, and I'm sure we all would.
I know there were many businesses that sponsored the Adopt a Pot through the Green Team.
And we had
which
many
was
that-
nice with the little tree and those
Yeah.
planters, because in the winter,
Yeah.
the planters certainly don't look as nice as they do in the springtime.
We might have a waiting list next year, which is kind of nice.
Very good. So I guess actually the last item on capital would be for the police department. I think the council president asked a great question about what the chief's priority is. I think we've all seen the Office of Emergency Management van around town. You can see that it is aged, about 20 years old. So how are we feeling about that? Just do one? Try to do two?
Well, what does the chief recommend?
He said, well, of course he would want all of it.
Of course.
There's a level of need for all of it, but he did say definitively his top priority was the supervisor's vehicle.
So we can get by with one.
I sort of lean towards that myself.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say it's a lot of, important items that have come up that just need to be done. And so if we can prioritize this particular department and just do the one, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, sounds good. And then, if there are any other questions from the mayor or council, I'd be happy to answer them, or our professional staff here. But Councilman Sardo, we're looking at no tax increase this year with the budget that's before you tonight. So some great news, considering it's been 17 years since that's been said. So,
I have
sure,
I have
Councilman.
a simple question. The digitation of all these documents, and it's 40,000 plus we're being bonded for 40,000? Am I taking that right?
So what we would do is we would do a bond ordinance
So my question is,
for,
over how many years does this happen?
what do you mean by how many years?
Are
does
we
this-
conquering all this in 1 year, or are we doing this in, say, a conjunction of 3 years?
Essentially, the bulk of it would be done just in this year, but Ms. Ariema, do you want to add to that what you could see projected out the next couple of years with records management?
Physically, it's a big endeavor, so, but because we're gonna engage the Union County Infrastructure Grant, then one of the requirements of that grant is you have to spend that money within 2018. So the digitizing process is a company, I've already had them out here, they'll come and they'll take all my stuff and I never see it again. So that part is about $40,000. The other $40,000 I'm gonna start spending right away. I'm gonna buy this shelving and spend it down, but the physical doing of it is gonna take me more than this year, but I won't spend all the money this year. So I'll buy everything, I might have to store the shelving a little bit, but I'll get it all done.
So I guess my question is, will this monies come up again in the next year coming? Will we be talking about this again?
It's not my plan, the $80,000 is what I feel in my budget, and I really think I'm gonna really make a huge mark. And I only have 3 years to get it done, so I don't see me being able to do more. Even if there is more, it's gonna have to move on to the next person that takes my place, because it's gonna take me.
Okay, thank you, and I don't think you're leaving.
Please open your mouth, sir.
Just check her app on the phone.
Yeah,
Right.
it's down to the minute.
So, Mayor, if you'd like to open it up to public comment?
Now, do we only talk about capital items? Was that, and I apologize for showing up late and asking a question that may have surfaced already, but.
No, that's okay. I went through a number of items in my budget speech, and I can get you a copy of that. And essentially, I opened it up for questions from, our fellow council people, and that's, all right, I got your copies.
Sort of had one.
Got both sheets there? Good.
Yes.
So there's that.
Okay.
And we also talked about the cap bank ordinance. Warren explained it. I don't think there were really any questions, but he explained that, so that's something that we'll look at later this month, up for introduction. So have any questions, I'm
Yeah.
happy to answer them. And
So, in terms of in having a zero tax increase, I mean, it generally means that we had revenue increase at some point. Can someone explain what the new revenue were, why we're looking at maybe a $0 increase? please?
Sure, it is in the speech, but we had some one-time revenue, some FEMA money this year, and also $75,000 from Russo One in fees came into this
Yes.
budget, so we benefited from that. So you are right, and I made the comment earlier that to get a zero, the stars really have to align, and it worked out that way. You know, you don't always get those one-time fees, but when you can apply them and ease the burden on the taxpayer, you know, why not?
Absolutely.
So we have additional money coming in. In terms of a revaluation, how does that cost be spread across 5 years? Where are we at with that in 2018, and how do we look to get this all done by 2020? What is, I mean, Tina, I don't know what everything you need on your end, but what exactly cost do you need in order to fulfill that?
Great question, and we spoke about it in the committee, so Warren, if you can explain that, you know, as much as you can in terms of the financing.
I don't know when you're gonna do it, but you have to get a general idea how much it's gonna cost. And what they do, the state lets you do what they call a special emergency. So say I'll make up a number, say it costs $300,000. You do it in, say, this year, you do a special emergency, they let you raise 1/5 over the next 5 years. So you'll be raising $60,000 a year. You're allowed to do it over 5 years. So they call it a special emergency, so you find out what the amount is, you appropriate all the money now, you spend the money now, but then you raise it over 5 years, so there's not one big hit on the budget.
Okay.
I don't
So
know what the amounts are.
where I'm at, what I need from you is, there's a list of authorized agencies that can fulfill this service for us. In order for me to get a ballpark, I had to reach out to one of them, and I did. Gave him some information, and I'm waiting, I reached out for him, I believe it probably was one after our finance meeting, so it was probably last week. And I'm waiting to get back to me with just a ballpark. Once he gives me a ballpark, you gotta put the funding in place, then I'll do the RFP. We gotta move fast. So as soon as this guy gives me a number, an estimate, you guys gotta put the money in place. That's for what Mr. Perkins. Mr. Goriello has been hired to make the tax maps. One of the conditions I put in the contract was those tax maps have to be submitted to Trenton by April 30th. I had to give them a chance to do them, obviously. So that is a condition of the situation. They should be submitted by April 30th. I'll reach out for him, see how he's doing. And I believe that from what our assessors told me, that the tax maps will probably get sent back and we have to change this. And so that may take a little while to cure that, but in the meantime, we could move forward with the rebound company, hire it, and get started. And we have to, otherwise we're not gonna get done by 1/1/21. So I'm just waiting for this guy to give me an idea so you guys can do the money. I may know that by next council meeting, and you may be able to tell me, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that you have, or you feel comfortable with everything in the budget in order to get this done. Is that the case?
Well, I believe that we are gonna fund the tax maps through this note, correct?
Right, anything having to do with the revaluation will be taken care of in the special emergency appropriation.
So,
And,
yeah, I mean,
well, I did want to add to that, though, our tax assessor, Ann Switzer, had spoken in the past, and originally, for the last couple of years, her estimate would be a total of around $200,000
right.
for revaluation, but going through it in Westfield, where she works full-time, she was able to come up with an estimate of about $150,000 for Norwood, so we're probably looking somewhere in that range,
And
and
then
it's
you can
just
go
up to
with
this
that.
company to let us know the
You can go with that number.
particulars.
I was just trying to get something that was.
Well, maybe the number you're gonna get is cheaper, because I think she mentioned that it was gonna be 150 at the beginning, and as she went on, it kept getting higher and higher.
I don't think I'm gonna get a cheaper number. I don't really I'm not really a fan of engaging the company for an estimate before I hire them, and then putting funding together according to their estimate. Because it kind of like gives them power over me, but it's just the way it is. I had no idea how much this costs, so, you know.
It's different for every town, it's per
Yeah, how
house.
I would do it
Right.
is I would just put the note together and then go out for the RFP and see, because I feel like they know what your number is. So, you know, it's real easy to see what we put in place
Mhm.
and they'll come in right with that.
Right. Perhaps
So-
we can coordinate with Ms. Switzer and then just make sure that she feels comfortable with the amount and move
Okay.
forward in that way.
Okay,
I mean, you only have to know the amount when you award, I mean, the emergency only has to be in place when you award the contract. So you can go out and actually take bids, not have any funding in place, you're not doing
yeah,
anything,
but
it's just
you
take
only
bids.
have 60 days and you got an extension and it's a lot of work for me.
Yeah,
and-
but the special emergencies is
Yeah.
it's one meeting, so I mean, once you pass it, it's, the funding's in place. It's both one resolution, so I'm saying you can go out and actually bid, find out what.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that, that
And then
helps a lot.
I'd rock and roll, see if we can get some,
That
You can
helps a
do
lot.
the emergency.
That sounds really
I think
good.
it was
I think that's important to start that earlier or later, we gotta get this done.
So a special emergency note is just a resolution.
Well, not just, you're not doing it probably, right?
Whatever I'm doing is just one
Yeah,
read.
it's just true.
One read, no stop, nothing.
It's one reading,
Well,
okay.
that changes the
That
game.
does.
And then I think we have to rock and roll, get this, go out to bids. This meeting, I don't know when you can
I
decide
said that we're
that.
doing that now, so we can.
I'm having a little trouble writing the RFP, but because I did the samples I got, say I have a state food tax map, and we don't. So I gotta, I've been working on it, but the finance committee knows, I let them know very, very clearly that I'm understaffed. I lost a full-timer, a long-term full-timer. I'm training 3 people. I didn't physically, I didn't lose Sandy in the sense that she still works here, but she moved across the hall. So I'm short a body, a full-time body in my office plus another full-time body because I replaced her, but the person's brand new. So I'm really struggling with all these duties, and this RFP is a bit challenging. But I don't know what, I don't have an alternate resolution other than me doing it, so.
What,
Doing the best
based
I
on
can.
our timeline though, so we're ordered to have it complete by 2020, so all of it would be done fall of 2019. Could we safely get the tax maps in by, we'll get them by May at some point, right? Finalize in
That's what they
May?
do, they're going to Trenton.
They're going to Trenton and they're gonna
Approved by
get kicked
Trenton.
back.
And I've heard that,
Okay,
that's not an easy approval. That's
Okay.
what I've heard.
okay.
That Trenton always sends them back, and then they send them back, and then they send them back, and then they send them back. That's why I was stressing about getting it done.
Does it have to be done at the beginning of the year in 2020?
We have to be online by January 1st, 2020,
Okay.
according to that court order.
Let's coordinate a talk with our tax assessor, and then let's update the council on the 13th, because I want to see about how long it took Westfield once they sent their tax maps. You know, did it take 2 months, did it take 6 months? Because I think that really does change the game for us as to whether or not we'll move forward swiftly, or if we have the time to get the tax maps to make it better for you and easier and probably
I don't
more
think you can
accurate.
Wait for that now.
So you won't be able to put that in
I'm
your
gonna take that
RFP?
piece out.
You'll take
that I
that piece
had.
out?
I'm gonna say my tax maps are.
Okay, you can do that.
Yeah, I have to.
Then let's move forward, sure. Okay. That sounds good. We can
Ms.
have that on
Arena,
the
except a
agenda
question.
in the near future.
Can we share a document that like a town like Westfield or Roselle Park Road?
Sorry, start that over
Can
again?
we share the document that a town like Roselle Park or Westfield Road to get the?
Oh, the RFP.
Yes.
I got Westfield.
Okay. very good.
And, you know, I think probably most of them have the same language, and it has a lot of, you know, Ann has to give me some more information, and it's not an easy RFP to write, it's time consuming.
I wouldn't
But,
think you would.
I don't, you know, I'm doing it, I'll get it done.
Thank you.
Yeah, a couple more things. I was able to obtain the electronic budget, and when you look at that, I can see that the surplus that we're anticipating for 2018, when you, is 760,000 or so? 755, okay. Whereas last year, we were at what, 358? Is that our fund balance?
That's what we used in the
We
budget.
used- That's what we used in the budget, right? Now we have an additional 400,000. I mean, I understand the 75,000 one-time fee. Help me fill in the other 3.25. Where that other, how we're using 755,000 in this budget? Because I see our appropriations went up about 300K as well, which is our expenditure. No problem. I just want to make sure I understand it all.
And while they're getting that, it might be worthwhile to also share that we, in using that number of surplus dollars, we brought the fund balance left a bit more than last year, because last year, it was quite honestly on the lower side for us historically in Garwood, and our CFO could probably speak to this, but we did receive a call just to make sure we were okay here in Garwood,
Yeah, they,
financially okay with our
the rating agencies track our surplus as one of the indicators of the stability of the town, and when it drops below 500,000, it kind of sets off little alarm bells, so they call and they want to know why you use that much surplus, do you plan to regenerate it, so we were on their radar last year by the amount of surplus we used.
So we did use additional than what was initially recommended to us, but it was still considered a safe area. But it was one that we felt really could not be taken any further at this point, especially given the rating agency's call last year.
I think we're all comfortable with that,
Right, right,
with Sandy's advice.
exactly.
course.
And our auditors.
Yes,
Right.
I'm grouping them all together.
Because you can't always expect it to have that kind of unbalance on it.
Okay, so to go to back to your question about the increase in surplus, there was a few other factors that I could point out. The 2016 appropriation reserves that lapsed were up significantly from the prior year. So we lapsed 324,000 of unused 2016 appropriations, so that goes right to surplus. I can tell you that's not going to happen again this year. We're down about 150,000 at this point in 2018 as we were in 2017, so you're not going to see that much surplus regenerated from appropriation reserves. Our other revenues, we spoke to the planning board fees. The total revenues were up about 112,000 from a prior year. 76 of it was the planning board, but you still had some other revenues, the FEMA, that's built into that number. And then probably another one of your larger increases was your tax revenue. I think a lot of that had to do with the people that came in, and it's not necessarily the people that prepaid, but we ended 2016 with a lot more delinquent taxes, and in 2017, everybody came in and cleared up their delinquent taxes and prepaid.
Well,
So,
to pay your 18 taxes prepaid, you had to pay your 17. So if you're going to try to prepay for tax deduction purposes, you had to clear up your 17.
so we took in about 190,000 more in tax revenue in 2017 than we did in 2016, and you're not going to see that again next year. It's unlikely that you'll probably be running at the same level of delinquency.
Also, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, some big delinquent tax.
Yeah, delinquent taxes came in, last year you anticipated 375 in delinquent taxes because the Westwood didn't pay, so everybody
How much
paid.
was that? More?
We anticipated 375 last year. This year we're only anticipating 200 because you don't have the delinquencies, everybody paid. The Westwood paid 17, so that was a current tax. So the surplus had to replace the delinquent tax revenue that you had once Washington came around. So even though you used more, but there's other revenues that dropped out.
Any other questions?
Is it prudent, I mean, and this is a question for us, not necessarily for them, thank you, Sandy, Warren, appreciate it, to use all these one-time fees in this particular budget? Now, I can understand the benefits of a $0 increase, I I can be appreciative of that. Let's take an alternate approach, right? Let's say we don't use 755,000 for surplus, so we use 600,000, and then we are in a better position maybe in 2019 when we do this kind of thing. I want this council to think about that, and in doing this.
Right, and it's a very valid point that you bring up, and as a finance committee, in conjunction with our professionals here, we spoke about that at length, that exact question, because we didn't want to act in this year eager for a zero, as we are every year, but, eager, and it was very, very close within reach. And so we didn't want to, get the zero this year, but also, like you said, hurt things down the line. But we also looked at it that, in particular with fees, we have other redevelopment projects where we can expect fees coming in for the 2019 budget. So those are other one-time fees that can be a benefit to that budget in future years. So essentially, this is something that, we're still in a conservative but an okay place with our fund balance. So, essentially, your suggestion there would raise the taxes close to $90 a house, about 175,000, I think you said, less anticipated surplus. So now we're going from 0 to 90, and I don't know that anyone in the public really wants that, so.
Well, we spoke about this at length, because after I got done doing the cartwheels all around the room, I said, what's gonna be the repercussions going forward? And we spoke about it for over an hour, and we just want to be, nobody knows what's gonna happen in the future, nobody. We cannot have a zero tax increase this year. They'll go up next year, maybe they won't. But you could have a tax increase this year, and it will continue to go up. I wanted to see 1 year of some kind of tax relief for the residents. 1 year out of 17, that's all I wanted. I ran for council based on that. I didn't run for council based on increasing taxes, decreasing taxes. I've never promised anybody anything. And I said in every house, I would be happy with a zero. And I feel like this budget accomplishes that. Plus it gets a lot of things off of our plate as far as things that are needed, really needed. And like I said, we discussed it at length. And I feel comfortable, I understand where you're coming from. I like to be saving money this year for next year. Doesn't always work that way for people that are out there in the houses and paying
You
everything.
could hurt them down the road. That's the thing.
We've been hurt down the road for the last 17 years.
I understand that, but what happened in the past is the past. Now you have to look at it going forward. And the one thing I wanted, that's why I brought this up, and if it's not 600,000 that's being brought forth, maybe it's 650, maybe it's 700,000, maybe it's something along those lines. And also, one thing I noticed is the capital improvement fund, there's 15,000 going into it. We have a real opportunity to shore that up. What is in the current capital improvement fund right now? I'm sorry to ask all these balanced questions. I ask it all the time.
All these what?
Questions. I've been doing this since 8:30.
While they're looking it up, I just wanted to say that, this obviously, like we said, was something we spoke about at length. But I did feel comfortable after talking to our auditors and our CFOs, and honestly, Councilwoman Tedisco, who's been doing this a while. This was my first year, on this committee and learning the ropes of it. I did feel comfortable that we weren't going to shortchange next year, that we were looking forward to some other opportunities for revenue from the other redevelopments. Whether or not that means a zero next year or not, who knows? But I don't think in terms of hurting the public down the line. I think we were very conservative, honestly, in what we did to ensure that.
And I just want to bring up something from recent history, 2014, when I must have been the finance year then too, because it was like 5 times out of 7 years. But we were looking at $39 increase on the average home in Garwood, which was the lowest tax increase that it had been in about 13 years. And there was some criticism from the public that night saying, and maybe even from the dais, I believe it was from the dais as well, hey, why don't we use more fund balance and get a zero? And we said, look, we have a bond sale this year. If there's any year that you want to make sure that you're extra conservative with your surplus, it's this year. So we feel comfortable with $39 rather than just cutting more from surplus, or rather tapping into more from the surplus to get the zero. So, I mean, I can stand by my record of being prudent when it comes to this to make sure it's a fiscally responsible decision. And, you know, we have to balance what the taxpayers ask from us every single year with what we have in front of us, the facts, the budget sheets, the department requests, et cetera. So just to shed a little light on recent history, I think it's important because these types of questions come up.
Well, that was the one big question. I mean, what are gonna be the ramifications going forward if we finally get this zero that I've been waiting for over 15 years for, and a lot of people have waiting. I mean, that was the problem for us. We just kept going over it and over it and over it, and then we just went back and started cutting more where it could be cut. That's what we were doing. I mean, one night we were here for 5 hours, screaming. Well, that was me screaming, but it was 5 hours.
Warren, Sandy, do you guys have what the balances in our capital improvement fund?
Yeah, 124,000.
That's what we're at.
It's not in your, we need to, how can I explain that? Raising that, stuff that was on.
You have, what, 124? You got 124, that's your down payment, that's your 5% down. You're putting in, what, 15 in the budget?
Correct.
And then but you're looking to do all these projects, so you need 5% down on all the projects. That's where it's gonna come from, the capital improvement fund. So, I mean, you need something for your hard cash down payment. And then two, I mean, you could do actual projects. If you have small projects, $10,000, $15,000, you do it directly for cash.
Right.
But you're authorizing a bunch of projects, so you're gonna need 5% for, you know,
Right.
so.
Which we had done in the past, and that's one of the reasons why it's gone in the past few years from about 200,000 to 120,000, because we were doing projects like revamping the dispatch center for about $30,000 with
Paid cash,
with
which
cash. And
everybody likes.
And it was something that the council at the time was discussing and debating, you know, go into a little more debt or use cash. So we're constantly in that battle and always, and I think it's a good battle to have. And the question you raise is valid, and these are debates we should have.
With the bond law says the project has to have a 5-year useful life, but they don't give you a dollar amount. So you could bond something for $1,000. A lot of councils, they set a limit, they're not gonna bond any project if it's, you know, if it's below, say, 25,000, or you know what I mean, or 50,000. Some goes as high as 100,000, they're not gonna bond, because there is no dollar limit on the 5 years. You know, it could be a capital item, but price, it could be, you know, $5,000. I mean, you're gonna bond $5 million, not really. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it. But there's no threshold, it's only capital, to do capital, or it has to have a 5-year useful life. There's no dollar threshold, so I mean, a lot of times council set an informal amount, nothing, you know, 50,000 and below, we're gonna try to do it for cash. I mean, it's just a, but it's a policy, it's not really a, you know, requirement.
Councilman McCormick, how do you feel?
Well, I have a couple of questions, and I'm probably gonna be corrected. But, in the capital funds that we have, it's $124,000. And everything that we take out of that $124,000, we have to be bonded for?
No, that gives you a hard cash down payment, the way the bond law is written.
So out of that
If you authorize $1 million of debt, you need $20,000 hard cash to match it. So if you're gonna authorize $1 million, you need $20,000 of your own money put up front. It's like a down payment on a house. I mean, you need something, you need hard cash down.
So to go back to Councilman Sarno's question, I hope I get it right. If we put more money into this fund, would it be beneficial for the town, as we look at the DPW expenditures in the year to come, to pay cash for a piece of a used equipment, knowing that we have the monies already in the bank, versus having to bond something
That's right.
and pay for it over X
Yeah, in
amount
other
of
words,
years?
you're doing a capital project, doesn't mean you're bonding it. In other words, I mean, like I think what Councilman Tedesco said, you started with 200 grand, so you did a couple of projects over the last several years that you did for cash. So it drew that balance down. But if you have something that's, like I said, I don't know what some of these projects are, but the amounts, you can do it for cash if you want to. There's no reason to bond it.
Okay, so.
That's just up to you.
And then I guess this next part of my question will go back to Councilwoman Sarah Tedesco. You talked about the taxes may go up to $90, was that the number?
That was based on Councilman Sarno's
And how
original
much money
suggestion.
was Councilman Sono talking about that was basing us on 90 grand increase?
I wrote down 175,000.
So for
So
100,
basically leaving $175,000 in the fund balance would then equate to us now having a budget that we presented as zero, go to $90 on the average home.
so for 175,000, the average homeowner would pay $90
Right.
to equal 175,000? Is that math correct?
Because it's $18,000 in tax point. If you raise spending 18,000 or you lose revenue for $18,000, it raises the tax point. So one tax point on average assessment is $10. So what he just mentioned using less surplus, and that was about 175, so it's what, 5, maybe 7, 8 cents, maybe not 9, but it'll be $80 if you use less surplus. I mean, it's just, so for every $18,000 less of surplus you use is going to raise the taxes 1 point. So you're at 0 right now.
And that's based on a $100,000 assessment.
That's $100,000.
And there's a lot of houses that are over $100,000 assessment.
And to my last question, and again, I'm always new to this, or I am new to this. So this year, we're coming in at 0, and I'm sure everybody listening tonight, not just here, but on the tapes, are gonna be very happy that it's 0. Will that be detrimental to us the next coming year, where we don't have all these funds that came in?
Well, our taxes have gone up every single year. It didn't matter whether, and it wasn't 0 all those
Will
years.
we pay for the 0 increase right now?
That's
Will we
what we
pay
were-
more than what we're doing now?
That's
That's what we were
discussing.
just discussing,
Okay.
and when we discussed it as a committee, we felt comfortable that we weren't hurting the residents in future years, that there would be some revenue coming in from future redevelopment projects and fees from that, that would sort of help offset.
Right.
Um,
And another item that I didn't mention, but will also fall off next year is $18,000 about $18,000 in the payment of a retirement. So sometimes when an employee retires, they have an amount that they can basically cash in for. And so when that's a very large number, councils in the past have decided to spread that out. And so in our budget, it's a smaller hit each year rather than one shot, because that could be one person retires and taxes go up $40. So it's a way to even it out, and so that's dropping off next year as well. So.
Thank you. And to the people on the finance, I'm not questioning what you guys decided, you women decided. I'm just questioning.
Councilman, I'd be careful with that
Yes,
one.
women.
I can't tread water on that.
You spent a lot of hours, it's just my turn to question what you guys went over already, so it's, I'm not beating you
No,
up.
no.
No offense to
It's
the
not-
councilman
not
at all.
taken like that.
It's a
at all,
valid
so.
question and something we
Yep.
discussed
Mhm.
ad
Yeah,
nauseum.
we were going on over 2 hours with that, on each day. It was like,
Another thing we found is that thing that I gave to Laws and License about charging the fees for the abandoned properties.
yes.
We put the ordinance in place, but I found out that other towns charge fees, and I mean hefty fees, the deterrence for getting these houses
Mhm.
from being abandoned and vacant. And so I
We're gonna be
was,
working on that in laws and license at the next meeting.
there's literally a property in town that if we would have had this in place, would have gave us about, what, $50,000?
Yeah, because the other towns were charging, and we weren't charging
charge a
anything.
lot of
These
money.
properties are sitting there abandoned, nobody's living in them for years.
Yeah.
Right, so we're gonna be looking at new ways to bring in some
Right.
more revenue.
So we talked about the property maintenance officer, that would be their responsibility, because I'm starting to get these new certified requests about these abandoned houses where I have to certify it, so I physically, have to go in my car and go see if it's an actual abandoned house, or it's really, so we're working on getting that property maintenance officer,
Mhm.
because, as a matter of fact, can I start working on that, because I want to start making some
Well, I
calls for
mean,
that. So I keep getting these letters.
Well, I'd like to go over there and take a look at
Well, I would like to change that ordinance
careful.
because there are abandoned houses in town that the people are registering with me, but I don't charge a fee.
Well, then we gotta get going on. We're
We're
gonna be
going
having a
on that,
meeting.
we're losing revenue, we can get revenue for that. Remember I gave you a copy of Springfield's?
Yeah, we got it all. We have it all in our packet, and we're ready to go with our next meeting. All we're gonna be
So
discussing.
that's new revenue, that's
Yeah,
newfound revenue,
Right,
not,
X amount of
yeah,
dollars a
banks are
year.
paying it,
Yep.
not people, so.
correct.
Maybe you could talk about the fees and then also how we want to go about filling that position.
Right, let's do that. Let's not rush to it per se,
Right.
but rest assured, I know Councilwoman Kukrow is quick to hold a laws and license meeting, so.
Okay, well, you have the property maintenance ordinance, right? We're
Yes.
doing that for introduction, so sooner we can get this person, because I'm getting these letters. and
Because
I
we are
literally
losing
gotta
money,
look.
and some of those
We
houses
wanna
were
fill
abandoned
this
for
As
years.
soon as possible.
Yeah. The house next to me is abandoned,
It is?
yeah. It's resident
empty.
for everybody.
Well, you certainly don't want to leave money on the table, do we? So.
No.
Any other questions?
I should say it's vacant.
Over the head.
Sorry, I mean, to look at a zero increase, I gotta give you my intuition here. I think it's a bit of a fool's errand to go about doing this. And the reason I feel that way is because I look, I'm like, we have a park to repair, we have roads to do, we have equipment to buy. To say, oh, we need to do this relief, the relief is, we have to really look at our capital improvement fund. We have to look at, do we use all this surplus now? We have to say, all right, in terms of, you know, the one-time fee from the planning board, that's $75,000, that came from $250 per unit. So how many more units do we have left? We have less than that now, maybe, we have maybe about 200. So what's that gonna give us? About 50,000. You know, I understand that there's other revenue vehicles out there, but I want everyone to think about it. You don't have to make a decision now. You know, obviously we're gonna come back on the 20th, we're gonna discuss this again, but you know, I'm giving you my gut feeling about a lot of this. It's to chase that dollar amount. And I know this is always something you talk about, I get it, but you have to look at the future as well. And you have to say, wait a minute, let's pump the brakes here. What if we put an additional 45, 50,000 to the capital improvement fund, and we decided to go rent a couple vehicles out, and we meet in the middle on some of these departmental requests in terms of vehicles and things like that. You know, I think we have to be innovative in a town like us, being small, and we have to do things like that. And that's what I want to put in everyone's head. I'm not going to tell you to make a decision here. I'll probably come, you know, I want everyone to just think about that going forward.
Thank you.
Welcome.
For clarification, what did you mean by meet halfway on the capital items?
Meaning, like, for example, let's say that there was a new vehicle that was being requested by a specific department. What happens if we met halfway and said, look, we can't give you a brand new vehicle for $70,000, but we'll meet you in the middle. We'll get a vehicle, 2012, with 25,000 miles that someone's getting rid of, and we'll do it for half the price. That's a meeting in the middle. I want to give our town the opportunity to do that, while still having enough money available in case we have to put down 5% and we have the cash available to do that. That's what I want to put in people's heads, to have that, just think that way, that's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just before we go into public comment, I just have a couple comments. First of all, I think the Finance Committee did an outstanding job. You should be proud of yourselves. Councilman Tedesco, Councilman Kumastock, Councilman Kukrow. And also, too, I find it very refreshful that the council as a whole have taken your suggestions and going forward with them, that we're going to really put things together and go forward with our capital projects. And I think as a council as a whole, you should be all commended for this evening's activity. Thank you. Public comment? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the mayor and council? Please step to the microphone and state your full name and address. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
No.
Hi, everyone. Arlene Yanagasha, 211 Cedar Street. So a couple questions.
Yes, ma'am.
This was good to have and everything like that. Does everyone in the borough get a raise every year? Like, is that a law you guys have to have?
I can answer part of that. Mayor, you mind if I?
No.
Okay, so there are union employees, so they have a negotiated contract. There's also 4 positions recognized by the state of New Jersey as protected positions, in other words. So essentially, the law on those 4 positions is any raise that you're giving others, you need to give to them. Outside of that, there is a small group, to be honest, it's a small group of non-union, non-protected employees that come to the full discretion of the council in terms of raises. So historically, the raises vary. So years ago, 7+ years ago, there was a policy where the better of the 2 union contracts, DPW or police contract, any non-union employee got that raise, the better of the 2. That was done away with by that council. Now it comes to the Finance Committee every year, and it's a discussion point. So there have been years where no raises were allocated for those folks. There have been years where a smaller percentage has been, or perhaps something more in line with the union raises.
What's the dollar amount that equates to the 2% for the non-union? If there's only 4 people, average what, 50,000 salary? it's about
Sure, so there's 4 people that are protected, but then there are additional that fall outside of that category. They're
Yeah,
still
but
non-union.
protected and union, you
Sure.
have to do it, so it's not like.
Our
I can't
CFO
question
has
that
those
one.
numbers, either,
So
The ones that are you said 2% non-union,
right.
right? So
yeah,
I'm assuming it's not such a high salary.
it is
Yeah.
not. Let's see, it is, well, it's including the stipend, so it's not necessarily 2%, but there's 5 people that are non-union, and it comes to $2,675 for the total.
Next, please.
I'm thinking it's a high.
Each union contract is still calling for raises in each of the.
Correct, no, but I understand I understand that
Right.
the law says, well, whatever the rules is that sometimes they will they're mandated to get a raise. I get that part.
Mhm.
The other question is this records management situation. So this might be a difference between government and private corporations. So you're saying 40,000 is for the people to scan it in. That sounds like a legitimate amount. But then you said 40,000 for shelving. If it's all digitized, what do you mean by shelving?
So I believe I can start to clarify that, and Ms. Ariama, feel free to jump in. It was 40,000 discussed as a municipal amount to contribute, and $40,000 in grant money that we're applying for with Union County. And essentially, that's our opportunity to get Garwood dollars back here in Garwood from the county. So it wasn't, I don't believe it was 40,000 to scan and 40,000 for shelving, but Ms. Ariama can speak to that.
It's collectively an $80,000 project,
Mm.
it's a $40,000 grant, and they have to match that. I had original, when we were in our budget discussions, the grant didn't exist, so I just asked for funding. And then through this process, last week or a week and a half ago, the grant was released, so as a group, we discussed, well, we could double it, and I could complete the entire project. So I will be buying shelving, but the shelving doesn't cost $40,000.
But I guess my question is,
It's
if you're
the
going
kind of shelving-
electronic, why would you need shelves?
Well, because we have way more records that we could never scan all our records. That would cost about $500,000.
Oh, so how many years are you guys gonna scan?
It's not the years, it's the type of records. The type of records that we're going to scan are construction permit records and zoning and planning records, because those are the records that are most requested by people, because they affect people. Like, if you're going to buy a house, you can see the permit was. So those are the biggest challenge, and those take up probably the most volume as well, because their retention schedule is permanent. But when they're scanned and done properly, we can dispose of them. So but we have to do it in accordance with law, and that's how it has to be done.
So then here's the second question. So if all that's being scanned, right, you do have to pay for server fees then?
There will be some type of, as with anything, I mean, copy machines, all of them, there is a maintenance situation with everything.
Correct, yeah.
You know,
How much is that?
I don't know yet, because there is software you could buy, but I'm not gonna buy the software, I don't need the software. The software, I can index it myself. So, off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but it's not like $40,000 or anything
No.
like that.
It could run high though,
No,
depending
it's
on how
not.
much record you're putting in. It's all about the size of the data.
Well, I'm not
so-
I won't be adding to that.
Oh, so you're only putting,
Whatever they create, I will never add to.
so then you will still need
No,
paper.
we will scan here, we will scan in-house.
Yeah.
We will scan in-house. And then certain things have retention, 3 years, 6 years, 8 years, permanent.
I feel like there is, did you guys figure that, the extra cost to that?
There is no extra cost, the quote.
No, I'm talking about holding the records. We have an e-filing system, and we pay $18,000 a year to
That's
keep
a lot.
one, yeah, it is.
No.
I mean, we have records, I'm sure government has more than we do, but I know they're costly.
But you keep scanning?
Yeah, we scan every day.
Yeah, well,
We move forward
with
every
the
day.
company.
Yeah,
Yeah, see, we're not. This is a one-time shop with the company.
so you're only, I would, for
I'm not,
one,
if I want to scan more records in the future, it's going to cost me more money. I
so
won't-
this
I
is
won't-
only just
I
a
won't be-
specific project, the construction project stuff that you guys are
Certain
scanning.
records, let's put it that way, not just certain records.
Certain records have to be scanned the proper way, and certain records don't have to be scanned. It's basically get rid of all these hard copies get them digitized and get it on the
Yeah,
cloud,
no, no.
ready to store.
And then from here on, they will scan
Right, they're
themselves.
scanning from here, anyway, they've been scanning already.
Oh, you scan,
In-house.
you're just doing the patch stuff.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So I still do believe there would be a cost for you guys to scan it and put it on your server somewhere, right? That's more the.
Not an additional cost, we're paid by, we work here. We do it.
I might,
But you have the server, how much,
yeah, like
That's
the
what you're
server
talking
has
about,
to,
right?
eventually,
Huh?
yeah, eventually has, the
Yeah.
size has to run out. So servers aren't cheap. Server, I mean, my server, our server's like 80 grand,
Well,
and that only lasts us 3 years. So my thing is that I feel like that's,
when you say we,
like, I work for, this is what I'm saying, the difference between a private and a government company. I mean, a government,
I'm sure it's probably much bigger than us. It's $8,000.
well,
Yeah.
we cover everything for, that's 3 years worth of stuff.
That's a lot of money.
So you have construction projects every year. If you're only doing one project and you're telling me it's costing 40 grand, I'm gonna assume the next project that comes up is gonna be, since it's already stopped, probably 20 grand, and then another 20 grand.
No, the files that we're talking about are past files that are just in boxes for I don't know how many years.
Correct.
So from here on out, they've been scanning already and they'll scan in-house. This is just for the storage locker full of.
No, I understand completely, but whenever you go electronic on anything, everything's on a server. Everything's, even if you do cloud-based, it is an additional cost year after year. So
are you
that's why I
gonna store
was-
this on the server, or are you gonna store this on any kind of CDs or DVDs or anything? They're all going on the server.
I don't have my notes in front of me from the scanning company, but I believe they will be on a cloud along with everything else.
So then there is a,
We have a server, and the quarter, you guys know that our service needs to be replaced, that's in the budget, we're paying that
8,000?
cash.
Yep.
We all
It's an
know that.
$8,000 server,
But,
so.
you know, you're talking computer land, John, I'm no IT person, so,
I'm
there's
just,
no way, any maintenance contracts I have with any of anything are that expensive.
as a
My
resident,
biggest expensive one is with Edmunds, that's the biggest expense of maintenance contract that I have when it comes to IT, and that's $7,000. That's my most expensive.
trust me.
But thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, I appreciate 100% that you're not gonna raise taxes. Literally, mine was a $236 raise, and, you know, I mean, I always, as a person who deals with budgets every day, we look at, I mean, $2,000 is not gonna be nothing, so it's, you know, but I'm saying we look at raises. I look at projects like that, and I see additional costs every year just to maintain it, especially in the world today. Everything's electronic. Everyone works through their phone, everyone works through a tablet. You no longer have paper files. It's just a thing, that's just the cost. So that's why I'm trying to say, yes, it's nice that you have no raise in taxes this year. I mean, I would prefer a decrease in taxes, so then even if you have to raise.
There is the county and the schools.
We all have-
We
You
want that.
know,
Just
trust me,
can't-
then even if there was a detriment, as he was saying, for next year, if you have a decrease, it may balance out, you know, but that was pretty much, I think that was it.
Thank you.
That's a good point,
Yeah.
it's a great point about the
Thank you.
server. I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a cost going into the future. You know, because as you're gonna increase the data you put in there and all the memory. And as all that increased memory costs more money going forward. That's the point she's making. It's a great point. We deal with it working.
Well, we deal with it at our company, there's 100,000 people, and all the files, they're all paperless, and they're all on the server, so.
We also
yeah.
purge, you know, we are allowed to purge electronic records as well in accordance with law, which cleans them off our server, so they're just easier to purge. You just write to the division, get permission, and hit a delete key. It's a whole different animal than all this old paper. So as far as storage on our server, we purge stuff off. We
Well,
don't
you're not
keep
gonna
stuff.
have the amount that, say, Arlene does, or my company does, you're just not gonna have that amount.
No. But we do purge stuff off the server. Just because it's on there doesn't mean that we don't go through that and clean out electronic records. If it's just general correspondence on the computer, it's just like a paper letter. It has a retention, 3 years, 6 years. We write to the state, get rid of it.
Yeah, certain things have to stay on there, it's required, like for
And
us,
plus,
it's
you know,
7
me,
years
I
for
like
electronic.
to keep everything, which is a little bit,
Yeah, well,
I lean heavy that way because I like history and I want to know things, and I know things have value that can be destroyed, but to borrow it, they're valuable.
Mhm.
So, you know, I preserve a little more than probably somebody else might, but
On that note, we go back to the public, please.
I have, I gotta get some more stuff too.
Mr. Patterson, do you have some comments?
Of course. Good evening, Mayor, Council, professionals, Bruce Patterson, 325 Willow Avenue. I do enjoy these meetings. Just an observation first, I mean, I'm listening to a Republican wanting to raise taxes and Democrats fighting to keep the taxes level. Scratch my head for that. But, I have various questions. One is, last year, Finance Chair Tedesco was talking about going to each department and asking them for ideas of how to save money. Was that done this year also?
Well, to be honest, I became the finance chair a little bit into February. So the focus has been budget, very, very budget heavy. It is something that I spoke to the department heads about last year. So it's a general conversation that's being had and will continue to be had. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and as I recall, you said it was a very tepid response last year.
Last year it was.
You mentioned 61,482 in a pension increase. Is that more or less like a standard increase, or does that seem to be a high number? You know, the state usually dictates what we owe, right?
They have actuaries that come up with the pension rate every year, and that's how they determine what we owe them.
Yeah, roughly, but was it like a lot more than the last year? Because normally, with our employees and stuff, it probably slowly increases, but was it a big increase?
Think of it this way, it's about 20% of salaries and wages of those particular departments.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, the 61,000 though, is that?
Generally, no, it varies between PERS and PFRS. PFRS is about 25%, PERS is more like 12 or 13%.
I can't hear you, Sandy.
The PERS rate is about 12 or 13%, and the PFRS is closer to 25%.
Okay, actually, the question I guess, maybe I'm not explaining, was it a big, $61,000, was it a big jump from last year? Much like the RBSA, which was 63,000, that was a big jump, because that was actually a decrease last year.
Correct.
PERS went down about 20,000 this year from last year. PFRS went up about 60. So, and the prior year PFRS was about the same. There wasn't much change between 16 and 17.
All right, so one went up, one went down.
Yeah, I mean, if you want the history for, here, come on.
No, that's okay, I was just wondering if it was a big jump.
Sandy, don't encourage him.
Yeah, yeah, once I see more numbers, then I have more questions.
So for 2016 to 2017, PERS went up about 40,000. Now this year it went down 20. Well, it's just, it's what they tell us.
Oh, moving on. The rec complex, so from what I heard, the rec complex, $86,000 we received last year in fees.
No, since it opened.
Oh, since they opened. What did you receive last year?
I can get that for you.
And did I hear that it is self-funding or it's not self-funding?
It is self-funding.
It is self-funding.
In 2017, the revenue was $26,400.
2017.
Yes, that was 2017's total revenue from the complex,
Okay.
through rentals.
Okay, it is self-funding, that's good to hear. Yeah, you mentioned about FEMA money. We had a one-time shot of FEMA money. That was from, I know a couple of years ago, right, we were chasing some FEMA money down from, what was it, Irene or what, Sandy?
Yeah, that's what it was from, Superstorm Sandy.
Sandy.
It takes a while for it to make its way.
CFO Sandy. No, how much money was that? I missed that number, whatever it was.
About 40. I thought it was 40.
Yeah, 40, I remember 45 something, 48, And that's a one-shot deal, obviously.
Yes.
The $75,000 in fees from Russo, we received that already
Yes, last year.
last year?
That was for Russo 1.
Correct.
I also didn't realize those fees from the new agreement with Cranford, once they start paying for construction permits, we get after 120,000, 30% of that, and there's gonna
Yeah, we
be-
get more money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a threshold, you're saying? we have
Yeah,
to-
we increased it, yes.
Yeah.
$250 a unit, Bruce.
What?
$250 a unit.
Is it like a fee per unit? Or you're just dividing it out?
No, that's what it is.
There's a set
Go look it
fee.
up.
There's
Okay.
in the,
Because I'm on the
the
planning board, I
redevelopment
should know.
And I appreciate the explanation about the cap bank. Are we using any cap bank money in this budget?
Not this year, no.
I think you said there's 398 sitting in it for the last 3
Yeah,
years.
well, you'll lose probably about half of that because you can only use it for 2 years.
Yeah, it drops out.
It drops down.
Are we putting, well, I know we're not putting money, but we do have money under the cap that we're putting in the cap bank this year?
If they do the ordinance, yeah, about 65,000.
The bonding, I don't know if you added up the numbers yet, you know, because you guys were saying, we'll accept this, this, and this. So what kind of bond are we looking at? Sort of basic dump, you're saying?
Based on what was said yes to.
For all the things that you were bonding, it
Yeah.
was 70, 40, 30, 150, that was about right, right?
It doesn't include road projects, no. A grant from DOT, I didn't get a chance to copy the letter yet, but I remember Mike Disco saying something like we were gonna not do road work, but I don't remember why.
Not doing
No, I thought he was cutting back, it was gonna be cut back, 'cause something else was
Right,
gonna
there
be
was some
used.
reason.
We discussed it,
Yeah.
so the total we're looking at right now is $330,000. But the road discussion was that the infrastructure grant, the last couple of years, we have used it towards road projects. But we really get a greater return on investment with the DOT grants, because we usually get between 60 and 70% covered. So we were saying for road projects this year, we can just focus on the DOT application and doing roads via that mechanism rather than the county infrastructure grant. Because typically, it's always included roads, but this is the 1 year where it's opened up to be available for records management, so that's why we prioritize that use there.
Yeah, that was good. I did talk about that at the freeholder meeting one time, that they should.
Well, and I heard you and read it in the paper, so thank you.
Gee, sometimes they actually do listen to me, that's amazing. That's not
I
yelling
mean,
at me.
the grant doesn't say the words record management, let's just say.
No, it opens it up, there's more.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that I don't get rejected because, it says, this grant program is designed to stimulate the development of local properties of economic, social, transport, and government importance to local municipalities. I'm assuming that.
Mr. Patterson, anything else?
Yeah, actually,
That was a mouthful.
that $40,000 we're assuming we'll get from the infrastructure grant, right? What happens if it's only 25,000?
Well, I don't, that, they budgeted way more than that, the other projects.
Normally?
Yeah, so, and that's not the number I'm worried about.
Yeah, that roofing cost, the company I worked for was originally a roofing company, maybe I'll ask them just to see. Because that cost sounds like a large, $150,000 for that roof over there. Sounds like a lot.
Sure does.
I agree, it did, and that's,
Yeah.
I did talk about it with the engineer, and using his background and knowledge, he was comfortable with the estimate per square foot, so.
Yeah, but
Especially it's all getting
for
taken
reality,
down.
man, he was always on the money there.
Well, everything's getting
What's that,
taken
like
down,
25
right down
bucks
to
a
the
square?
studs.
This is 22.
22?
Yeah, I'll just double check the company I just worked for. What did we end up with at the end of the year, the surplus? The running fund balance was turned into the surplus?
We ended, I think, with 980.
980.
980. You're saying after whatever we're burying in this year's budget, you're gonna have left over 755, was it? Oh, okay, so the difference will be 200.
224.
Oh, so that's the surplus moving forward. And I guess just a comment, I mean, Councilman Sarno, I mean, he does bring up a concern about all these one-time, I guess, juices to the budget, you know, and yes, and they drop out, and then we're facing, you know, the shortfall to replace it. Possibly there's additional fees coming on board that cover something, but I do understand your concern. But, you know, also, I mean, I hate to sacrifice our future with a huge tax increase based on a zero tax increase this year. But to tell you the truth, I mean, I'd like to see a zero tax increase. I've been mentioning it over the many years. Of course, Arlene says, well, you know, wants to see a decrease, which is already great to see too. But anyway, I mean, I support, even though I do have concerns similar to Mr. Sarno, I mean, I do support it. It's great to hear a zero tax increase. I'm working over the freeholders too down there because they have a big surplus. But I don't think I'll see that. But okay, thank you very much for all your efforts, the many hours that you all put in. I know you stressed that a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
I stressed
And they're going to attest to it.
Thank you very much. all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Anyone else?
This is not a budget question. They're asking if, people are asking if there's recycling on the south side tomorrow.
Now, that's a question I don't know the answer to. I think it was the state emergency, I mean, the recycling company, and tried to call them, and the guy, my
I would
contact,
assume it's not, but
didn't answer, but
The assumption here is there will not be
No,
none.
I don't see
They
them being
reversed
able to
it.
get through at
Yeah.
that point.
but they're diehard than dinosaurs, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Turns out it's not the
I
snow,
think it's possible. They
and it
fall.
just rains, they'll be here.
It's a
They'll be
possibility.
here. They'll be here. Tell them right now they'll be here. So, I guess it depends on
Check
the
in the
weather.
morning,
When I call people, I have to call my offices, if it's a blizzard out there and there's snow around, I'll put it out. But if not, put it out.
I don't see any. So,
Mayor, before we close,
Yes.
we can close public comment, but I do have something to discuss about scheduling,
Okay.
okay?
Go right
So,
ahead.
we have to close public comment.
Seeing none, we close the public comment portion.
He's gambling you now.
I have no shame.
Not an ounce.
Thank you, Mayor. So just for the public's benefit, as I mentioned at the last council meeting, we have a breaking down the budget work session with the Finance Committee on March 15th here in council chambers at 7 p.m. So the public is welcome to join us. We're going to be serving some light refreshments and just talk budget, talk capital items, and really anything you want to bring to our attention. It's going to be just an informal meeting, and we really hope to see you there. Also, we do have the March 20th special budget meeting scheduled. However, and normally, ever since I've been finance chair, we're on the committee and starting in 2012, we had 2 special budget meetings. I fully supported that, as I said at the last council meeting, because typically these meetings will go close to 2 hours or over 2 hours apiece. So I would rather have 2 meetings at 2 hours or so each while we're all still of fresh mind, rather than one very long meeting until 11 o'clock at night, especially tonight, think about it with the snowstorm coming. So, however, this meeting was relatively short, so is that something that we want to cancel, March 20th?
Yes.
I have no problem. Whatever the majority wants, I'll just go
I
right along with it.
think the committee should speak first and then the rest of the
Sure.
council.
So my inclination would be to cancel it. I'm a big meeting fan, but if there is no clear purpose to it, then that's fine. In the past, I know we would usually spend 2 hours plus on the operating side of the budget, one meeting, and then talk capital at length the next. This meeting, we talked about both things, and so I would be comfortable canceling that.
I'm comfortable with that as well.
As
Usually we
balance
go
of
line
council?
item by line
Yeah,
item.
we do that.
There's really no need for at this
Oh, yeah.
point.
So,
Ms. Ariane, would you please cancel the March 20th meeting?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's
Thank
all,
you, everybody.
Councilwoman?
that's all, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. The regular meeting of the Mayor and Council will be held Tuesday, March 13th, 2018, in Council Chambers at 7:15 PM. Workshop session will start at 7 PM. There will be a public hearing in Council Chambers on bond ordinance number 18-03 on Tuesday, March 13th, 2018, at 7:15 or soon thereafter. Thank you and good night.